Right, hi guys, welcome back. You know how through this build I've been saying that's a little bit rough, but I'll get to that later. Well, unfortunately it's later. This is the most tedious part. I've got to do all the little fillings and sandings and things like this. That's the battery door to the other side. There's a corresponding void at the top of it, which I had to cover with this, so that's got to be filled under there, a little bit in there, a bit in the end. And then all this stuff's got to be cleaned up and refilled, because some of it, you can, as you can see, is pretty bad. So I've got to do that. Good old camera. And also, before I do start that, that's probably going to take a couple of days because of other commitments. I'd bring you up to date on the other things I've done. For instance, the cocking handle. Yeah, of course, the other side handle isn't going to fit in. So what I've done, I've just drilled a hole through the metal, put in a wash and a cotter pin. I think I'll just leave that there just in case I ever want to put the other handle on. Also, the magazine, I've put some epoxy putty there and made a nice, used a screw of the same size and marked it in. I think I'll do a bit more, make it a bit tighter, and then that's all going to be, you know, sanded and smoothed. So that's it. Right guys, now one of the other things I managed to pick up, this one's got a U-Butte Cool pressure switch, so you can see it come on. Yes you can, little butt. So that's going to be a great idea. That's going to go in there like that. Actually fits in quite snug like that, and this is going to go down here somewhere. So got my little laser sight. Right, so I've broken down everything pretty much. Got to put a few bits on. Still got I had a piece of metal I'd cut for there, and what recently we've been cleaning up in the house, just old stuff. We've got a stack of videotapes to get rid of, and the screws in them will be nice and big and they'll work better than these ones, and they've got a heavy thread in them, so they'll cut into that metal plate really nicely. Aha! Here it is, of course, in the box of parts. There it is there. Pretty rough, I know, but it looks pretty good once it's inside there and it's held on by 4 screws. So that's another part. Another thing, I put some holes in the front here just to make it a bit different, and that was these things, because there's so much detail on them and so many shapes, it's very hard to get graph paper on there or something. So what I did, just found this bracket, held it in place, pushed it up against that ridge, held it in place and coloured in the 6 holes. Then I got a pin vise, about 1 millimetre, and drilled in the centre of each hole. And then before I did anything else, I joined those holes up with a pencil line and drilled a hole at the X, and then drilled in with, I think that's about 3.5, 4 millimetre drill, just to make it a bit more interesting visually. I've already gone over this with a scouring pad, just to rough up the surface. That's a trick from Adam Sandler, if you've seen his video about the one-day build he did for somebody. Another good one is these painting sponges. So I've got sandpaper on both sides and sponge in the middle, so they really conform to a shape. And I only ever use sandpaper as tiny little bits to get into really tiny little areas. You don't need to do a lot of sanding on these, it's just to scratch the surface. I think that's virtually everything I needed to talk to you about, and it's just ready to go to the painter. I've just got to do all the filling now, which is going to be so much fun. So when all that's done, I'll get back and I'll break this down and we'll do the painting and we'll take you through that. Still haven't really decided on a colour scheme. I'm tending towards white and maybe blue, make it a police gun for close quarters entries, a military gun in a grey multi-splinter camouflage. Still haven't really, you know, made up my mind, so I've got to get that sorted. But one thing I found, even a coat of undercoat will unify the whole thing, and you haven't got all these colours screaming at you, so you can see it a bit better and work out what you're going to do. Whatever I do, this one gun is going to be heavily weathered but not heavily used, so my usual bits of rust showing through won't be that great, but there'll be a lot of carbon scoring around here like it's been used. I'm intending to drill a couple of hits on the on the shield, one up here near the screen, which will crack the screen. I've still got to sort that out, but I'll do that after it's painted, and we'll take it from there. So that's about it. I'll get on with this, and I'll see you again when we start painting. Bye. Right guys, here's what I meant by the tedious part of this sanding and stuff. I realised I'd forgotten to get out these holes, and you can see that there's a lot of little bits in there I've got to clean up. Now the problem is this plastic is really soft, and the only way really to get it out is with a sharp knife, taking out each bit individually. You could possibly use a lit match in there very quickly just to melt those little bits, but I don't want to try that, because as you can see, if you look in there, it's not really clearly defined, the inside of those shapes. So the way I've done it is put the grinding tool in my Dremel, go in and grind it off from the inside, not all the way through, which is probably a better idea come to think of it, but until that's quite transparent, those holes are transparent, light coming through, and then you just get in there with your knife and trim the little bits out. Now that obviously led to this problem with all these little bits I've got to clean up, so I'm going to try and grind it off completely on this side and see what happens, and I'll let you watch that and we'll see what we get. So you can see it's gone almost all of the way through. It's a different colour, there's plenty of light there, and that looks like it will work out really well. You just have to be very careful, because the inside of those lumps are so, well, they're not ill-defined, but they're not very defined. So I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to worry about trying to keep this in the camera view, so I'm going to go through them, do them, and get back to you. Right, well, this seems to work really well. The trick seems to be is to grind out the plastic from behind till it's paper thin. You can see how translucent that is, and then just get a brand new craft knife blade and just run it around the inside. I'm avoiding a lot of little scraps left over on the other side. Now you can see there, that one I've just cut out. Obviously that plastic is a little bit too thick still in the corners to get the blade in, and it won't cut very easily. So yeah, catching a bit. And also up here we have a problem where I've ground the plastic there too thin, and instead of the blade following the cut around, well, it's followed the weakness around, and so I've got a little blemish there. But that seems to be the way to do it. It's awfully messy inside, as you can see, but that really doesn't matter in the long run. So I'll go through and cut the rest of these out. We'll move on. Okay guys, there's my little bit. Still one or two little bits in there. I'm going to get a file on them. But if you can see in there, you'll see that sort of black and scorching. That's because ultimately I was required to use a match to burn off the tiny little bits, because there's a bit of a vicious circle. The more you trim off, the more little bits you leave. It's really odd. So this soft plastic, just so you know, as soon as you hit it with a bit of heat, it starts to smoke black, and these things, little dags on the end, just melt away. But what you don't do, you don't try and wipe them off while they're hot, but when they've cooled down a few seconds, they'll just actually break off on your fingers. So yeah, I'm going to go over all these little rough edges and get all that same method, and that bit will be ready for painting. So we're almost there. Back soon. Right guys, again, it's amazing what you find when the thing's sitting in front of you. And I forgot to fill up this great big hole. So I was looking around for bits and pieces to fill it up, and first I found this, but it was almost big enough, but it'd be very difficult, and also it's a slightly different plastic. It's very flexible. So what I've got a few of are these old gun muzzles of Retaliators, I think, and that shape fits in there nicely. So it could be tempted to put it like that and use that as your handle when you're handling the magazine, but I've got an old one which was painted black for some reason, and cut that to fit in there. And now I've got no real problem with the round carrier part of it sticking out that hole and jamming the gun. So I could just leave it like that. I could find another bit to glue in there, whatever. Not a great hassle, but I'm going to stick that in now. Now, this is my U-Butte acetone glue, and that's gone hard because last time I put those little grey bits in the bottom, I didn't put this on properly. It was at slightly ajar. But that's gone hard before, and all I did was splash a bit of acetone on it and give it a day, and that'll be nice and soft, and I could use it as my glue again. So, yeah, so the lid's on properly, so in a day that'll be nice and soft, and I'll glue that bit on. So while I'm waiting for that to happen, I'll get on with cleaning up and sanding all the parts. Right, finally we're at the painting stage. Now, just to explain what's happening here, I've got all the pieces laid out. Now you'll see they're on this frame. It's an old clothes horse thing, indoor clothes horse thing. What I've found is, if you've got a piece on a flat surface, like so, as you spray, the spray tends to hit the surface too and kick muck and dirt up onto the piece. Also, there's this effect I've noticed at the very bottom edge of the piece doesn't get painted. I don't know if it's the pressure of the temporary pressure of the spray keeping the paint from adhering. So I've just put them up on this rack, which will allow me to spray sort of past them, and the paint will just get on them as I go through. So I've got the rack there. This is actually my painting booth. These little dots in the back you can see here, they're actually holes. This is one of those plastic corrugated cardboard boxes hooked up to the vacuum cleaner you can see in the corner just there. Where is it? There it is. Barely see it. The vacuum cleaner. So, and because those holes are all dark around them, and it tells me that it's actually working, it's sucking the paint in, and I don't get nearly as much fumes as I used to. So I've got all the pieces laid out, and all the little pieces there up the other end on an old rack from a dishwasher, just so I can handle them individually.